day to everyone. Our next speaker is a 19-year-old sophomore at De La Salle University, currently taking up development studies and economics in the Philippines. He started to volunteer at the age of 9, which sparked his passion for volunteering in numerous organizations before establishing his organization, Youth Advocates for the Philippines Incorporated, and the ASEAN Youth Advocates Network. As an advocate for youth empowerment, he is also the current Philippine officer of the ASEAN University Student Council Union. Active locally in his community, he is also the president of JJC Makati and assistant vice president in the Lasallian Scholar Society. Last August 8, he, with his colleagues, officially launched the ASEAN Youth Advocates Network. He serves as the founder and executive director with more than 10,000 members all over the 10 Southeast Asian countries in just 2 months since its inception. This December, he was acknowledged by the UN Volunteers and I Volunteer as the Change Leadership Volunteer Champion for the year. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all give a virtual round of applause to Mr. Emmanuel Mirus Ponon.
Good morning. Yes, magandang umaga po sa inyo. To everyone that is watching today, I wish you a happy day, a blessed Saturday. Hello to the students of San Pedro College. I am very excited. I am beyond grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Knowing that our topic is actually very significant. It's actually very important. I really loved Sir Kenny's talk. I was actually there while he was speaking, and it's been an amazing day. I hope you've learned so far. I know that you will be learning a lot. You know, it may come to a point na grabe na max na, 'di ba? Kumbaga kung sa computer, wala nang storage. But you know what? Let's put our mind into this. Let's be focused because today is going to be a very jam day. Without further ado, my name is Mirus Ponon and I will be talking about facilitation management. Allow me to share my screen, and now as you can see, again, I will be talking about facilitation management, and this is going to be a very important topic. I know that there is a stigma when it comes to facilitation, because if I were to ask you, ano mas pipiliin nyo? What would you prefer? Would you prefer facilitation or a leader? What title would you prefer? I am Mark, the facilitator, or I am Mark, the leader. And eventually, all of us would want to be a leader because having this title, this decency of being a leader, just inspires us, which is actually a very big topic to deal with. And we'll get to that later. But before that, let me introduce myself. I believe I was introduced already. You may have seen my posters already, but let me have just a minute to talk about myself. My name is Emmanuel Mirus Ponon. I am 19 years old. My email and contact address is there. My email is there. You may contact me at info@youthadvocateph.org or Mirus@ASEANYouthAdvocates.org. And currently, I'm the founder and executive director of the ASEAN Youth Advocates Network. I'm the founder and national president of Youth Advocates for the Philippines. I'm the Philippine officer of the ASEAN University Student Council Union. I have represented the Philippines throughout numerous dialogues from different agencies, more particularly the United Nations Volunteers. I'm currently the president of JJC Makati, JCI Makati Youth's counterpart. That's just a brief overview about me. And for us to get to know more one another, because you know what, learning, which we will be talking about later, is always continuous. It will always be part. And that is why I encourage you to share your story. I want to be of influence to you, and I want you to be of influence to me. So I know that we're very tech savvy. We love our social media pages. Unfortunately, I do not have a TikTok account, yes. But you may contact me Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I believe these are the 4 most valuable social media sites. So please tag me at Mirus P. That's Mirus with an S and the P at _ Youth Advocate and at the ASEAN Youth Advocates. Leave a review on my Facebook page to enter to our Gcash giveaway. And yeah, I encourage you to share your story. I want us to have a foundation, a relationship with one another. And hindi dahil mag-Valentine's na. It's on us to be the to be learners every single day. And trust me, I'm learning from you. I'm learning from you without even getting to know each and every one of you. So I do know that you've talked about from building passion to advocacies by Sir Kenny to now facilitation management. Building passion to advocacy is actually one of my fortes when it comes to speaking. And to be honest, facilitation management is actually new to me. This is actually my first time talking about facilitation management. But of course, to be someone with the capacity to share and speak about facilitation management is to be able to experience and be of one, be a facilitator when it's for you to speak about facilitation management. And I have to tell you this to give you a cross-cut summary, all of us, a leader has to know how to facilitate. So, if you do not know how to facilitate, how can you be a leader? That is going to be a very, very big topic that we will be derailing for today. But before that, let's go back to the basics. I would always mention this throughout every time I'm able to speak. Today, I actually have two speaking engagements today. Tomorrow, I'll be speaking about startups, but I would always go back to the basics because we tend to not look at the basics. We tend to complicate things immediately. But why not we take a step back? Because one thing that I would always say is that for learning to be fun is for us to know the practicality of learning in general. And facilitation and learning go hand in hand. This is the golden circle, ladies and gentlemen. I've been given modules to as a guide for this talk. But for me, in every single thing that we do, this is the best. This is the best framework to use. This is the golden circle. Call me biased, but I love Simon Sinek so much. He has influenced me. Um, an officer actually told me that I am the Simon Sinek of the Philippines, which is actually very big. But Simon Sinek has been very inspiring because he has expanded and has given me this great perception of what this golden circle has to offer. And what is this golden circle? Some of you may have experienced it, some of you may not, but I tell you this is going to be very, very essential. It basically just asks you three questions. It looks so easy because we would always answer this whenever we would have an essay, an examination. What, how, and why. The core is why, followed by how, followed by what, which gives you a big definition that the why is the most important immediately. But why is that? Because for today, as we talk about facilitation management, we will be talking about these things. This is how we can depict and for us to learn at a more expanded and better level. What is facilitation management? How do I facilitate? And why facilitate? Because again, going back to my previous argument and previous analogy, you would prefer to be called a leader rather than a facilitator. But what if I told you that being a facilitator is essential to being a leader? So that in this case, we have to talk about the basics first. Because you may think it's basic, but it's not. You may think it's the ABCs, the one, two, threes. Oh, I don't want to be technical. I don't want it to be bureaucratic. We're the same. I'm an ENFP. I don't like bureaucracy. This is something that I've learned the hard way. But this is going to be very important because it's actually not basic to begin with. As we're celebrating Valentine's Day, I would like to give this analogy. How can I love someone? How can you love someone without knowing that someone? How can you know your why without knowing your what? So you have to know first, who is that someone? And how do you get to know that someone? And it gives you the question, if I were to ask you, why do you love your special someone? How do you love your special someone? Why do you love your special someone? If you ever heard of the term gold digger has been very contradictory, or not contradictory, but it's been very controversial for a reason. Contradictory of love, I might add. How can you love someone that you do not know? You have to know his or her feelings, emotions, past, present, future. We have that psychological definition. But this Valentine's, for me to give you a good overview of why the golden circle is important and why these three questions are very important, is true love. So I want you to know that to know who or what to do this particular action, how and why we do this particular action to this person. In this case, again, as stated earlier, you may think it's basic, but we're going to be talking about this. Why? What is facilitation management? How do I facilitate? And why facilitate? Okay? So we go first on our what, because this is where our definition of terms come from. Facilitation, facilitator, processing, intuition. You will be hearing these four terms, but I will not be talking about processing and intuition. I'll be focusing on facilitation and facilitator because we want to go back to the basics. And I believe these are the two essential definitions that you need to know. Number one, what is facilitation? I've been given a lot of modules regarding this, but if I were to summarize this, facilitation is a process of sharing ideas in order to achieve a common goal. Ideas is a very big word. Thoughts, opinions, expressions, emotions. It's a process of sharing what your mind entails that you would like to expand and bring to a particular group to achieve a common goal. When we facilitate, when we speak, I believe when I speak, this is a form of facilitation. It's a process of me sharing my thoughts about facilitation management for us to achieve a common goal. What is the common goal? Our goal is to know what facilitation management is. At the end of this course, not of course, at the end of this talk, my expectation, my goal is for you to learn what facilitation management is and for you to use facilitation management. I believe you will be having an activity, which I'm actually very excited about. So that's something that we can do. So this facilitation, it's very easy. It's a process of sharing ideas for a common goal. Okay? Number two, what is facilitation? Going back, process of sharing ideas. Going back, what is the expected output? What is the common goal? The expected output of facilitation is a developed higher thinking and planning. Develop. I am a development study student. I love this word. SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. Development, development, development. It's always been in my tongue whenever I speak. For us to facilitate in a setting, especially like this, is for you to develop, to be better, to think critically more, to develop, to be a better thinker. You learn, you are facilitated by teachers in college, in school, in your university, to be the best person that you can be, to be a better thinker, to be more intelligent, to be more well aware of what society will entail in you. And that, of course, includes planning. Because once you learn what facilitation management is, you are given a glimpse of what a leader entails. Because we're in this leadership summit, we've been talking about various advocacies, various goals, various topics left and right. Binhi, the organizers, have given you the best of the best speakers, except myself. But yeah, that's facilitation in a nutshell. I want you to learn the root of facilitation. Because basically, facilitation, ladies and gentlemen, is development. We facilitate to develop for it to serve as stepping stones. That is why, in an organizer's perspective, sino nga bang kinukuwang facilitators? Those with experience already. It's for you to develop. So, now that we know that, we have to know now the importance of the facilitator. As you can see in my background, you may know this person. She is actually one of my most favorite. Is that even grammatically correct? I'm not sure. But his name is Steph Curry, and he's a basketball player. And I'm assuming that some of you may know basketball, and basketball has been very famous in our country. And if you play basketball, you would know what a point guard is. And it would always remind me of the word facilitator, because a point guard facilitates the offense, sets the tone for the five players in the court to act like a team to win in that sport manner. So I hope that gives you an analogy when it comes to team building, when it comes to an organization, to a student council, to a group meeting, to your family. Facilitation is everywhere. So that's the importance of the facilitator. We talked about facilitation. What about the facilitator? The facilitator is basically the one responsible to help the group, a respective group. Like what I've said, it can be an organization, it can be the Sangguniang Kabataan, it can be the government, it can be whatever, a group, to reach its goals through a better process, through effective planning, guiding, and managing. And intent. I intended to put two ends because according to some theories and some journals, this would be, and to the dictionary, it would only end in managing. But for me, the facilitator has to be genuine. It has to be with a good intent, not just a simple intent, but a genuine intent. Because for me, my personal advocacy is that I believe that leaders today rarely have the good intention. As you can see, I won't drop any names, but it's easy to see, especially through years in the social civic community and nonprofit organizations, those with intentions that are bad. We can see that to our leaders, to our world leaders, to our national leaders. Again, I do not need to add, I do not need to specify. But the facilitator is responsible for that. To reach its goals through a better process, it has to be effective. That's why a facilitator's role is very big. You may think it's very easy, but it's not. Planning, guiding, managing. If we were in a business, you have different positions when it comes to that. You have an administrator to guide, to plan. You have development officers. You have development of project development officers. You have a managing director. And that's why a facilitator would depict you already its relevance to what a leader is. It has to be effective and with good intent. That's my definition. And this is something that I'm going to be very passionate about for you. Because there are going to be facilitators that will think political. There are going to be facilitators out there that does not want you to grow. Ano baliktad ng selflessness? Selfishness. There will be some facilitators, if I may add, that do not want the best for you. Let's say my personal encounter, let's say hindi kayo goods, let's say ingit siya sa'yo. Is the intent good? I don't think so. And that happens a lot through our schools, through our universities. Hindi ba? So I hope that gives you an overview of how important a facilitator is. This is Steve Nash. He's actually my favorite player of all time. He's actually now coaching the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA. And again, the same response. I just wanted to have a different background. Effective planning, guiding, and managing. And with intent. Now we go to our how. Mirus, I know what a facilitator is. I know what facilitation is. But how do I do it? I call it an art. Because some theories may suggest that there are certain correct theories for it. But for me, at the end of the day, it depends on the facilitator. And it's on him to know who he or she is facilitating. But I believe that these adjectives below would be the perfect art of facilitation in my book. Number one is safe spaces. We want safe spaces because at the end of the day, there will be some that will be maximized through pressure, which I believe is very evident and very relatable to those with strict parents. And there will be some that safe spaces is actually very personal. There will be some that want to feel comfortable, that want to have ultimum flexibility, like myself. Again, I'm an ENFP. That's my personality. So I would always love safe spaces. I would actually really prefer to be the leader because every time I have someone that is a fellow leader, we would usually clash. And that's a true story. And I'm very open to that. My girlfriend is like that. So have safe spaces. Number two, engaging dialogues. When we facilitate, let's say in a church group, when in an organization, you want to have an engaging dialogue. Hindi ba? You want them to engage. You want them to participate. You want them to be conscious and to be well aware and know that there is a reason why you are facilitating. It has to be engaging dialogues. It has to be a discourse, an educational discourse, learning left to right. What he shares is what he shares. Diba? I do know that at times in the Philippines, not to generalize, but syempre in every group that we are to have, when it's, let's say, a group work, or when we are divided into groups in a leadership summit, may isang loko-loko talaga lagi dyan. May kulang sa pansin, as they like to call it. Biglang may sisigaw. I know I've seen the best and the worst of it. And, if it makes the certain event or project engaging, then why not? For number three, practical unconventionality. This goes to my point earlier. There is no right way to facilitate. It depends on who you are facilitating. So your goal as a facilitator is to get to know the people that you're facilitating. It gets to be one that is to be people person. And I believe once you're genuine, once you have the intent, this can be very easy. Well, yes, we will be given some notes, some tips, but at the end of the day, it's going to be you. And I've experienced that as a church leader that would tend to go one on one and pray for certain individuals, to being a leader in the university, through mentoring one on one, through being an executive director, through different organizations, and through networking and diplomacy. This is going to be something very practical. So it you really have to have a presence of mind when it comes to facilitating. That is why my respect to those who are facilitating, like teachers, which use facilitating very much, it has escalated. Number four, strategic presentation. Of course, you want to make it strategic in such a way that there will always be something worth the hype, as the Gen Z would like it. Oh, dapat hype, dapat um yung climax laging may pakulo. We want to have a strategic presentation of the event, of the opportunity, of the learning session. Just like myself, we're still the how. My climax for my talk is going to be my why. O diba, in-expose ko na kayo. I am facilitating right now as a speaker. And I know and I'm listening to each and every one of you. There are some that may have their cameras turned on, some that have the cameras turned off. Some may be some may be in Zoom but are not listening. Some may be here but are listening, or just scrolling through Facebook and just listening like it's a podcast. I don't know. Especially in this new normal where we're called to be in our number one application in the world, which is Zoom. It gives us a better ecosystem. It gives us a better perception of what a strategic presentation is. Okay? Number five is preventing and managing conflict. That's going to be very important. I think that's straight to the point. You want to prevent, you want to manage conflict. Uh, there will be times that the worst may come, and that is why, as the saying goes, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. Okay? Number six, listening and observing. Of course, this is going to be very, very evident. You have to listen, you have to observe. This is the main one. This is the main fundamentals. You have to listen. You have to observe. You can be hands-on, but there's always going to be a balance of the facilitator and those that you are facilitating. You're basically going to be guiding the group. Ayan, pangtamad na sagot. What is a facilitator? A facilitator guides the group. But for me, the art of facilitation is still going to be through the golden circle. And that is why in every talk that I am invited on, which this February I think I have more than 10, it's always based on the golden circle. Because I'll tell you why later. Now na pala. Now I tell you why. Why? We know what facilitation and what a facilitator is. I've given you some concepts on how to facilitate, some concepts to take note of, and a good facilitation as a facilitator. But this comes our why. Why are we facilitating in the first place? Is facilitation even important? I actually asked a friend of mine earlier, and I asked him, is facilitation needed of leaders? And he said, no, there, di naman. And I was like, really? And that would give you a good overview of how difficult leadership is, of how diverse it is, and how hard to be a leader is. Why do we facilitate? To help develop individuals to be the best that they can be. Your why will always depend on you. And again, my why is to be genuine and with intent in whatever I do. As a facilitator, given this opportunity to be with you today, my why is for you to learn to be the best that you can be, to use this learning when you get to facilitate next. That's the art of learning. That's how we develop, not just as leaders, but as a country. We have to stop the stigma. We have to stop the cycle that our past generations have done. I'll give you this analogy. Why is a political dynasty very evident in the Philippines? Because of power, because of money, because of resources. Until when will this be the case? Hanggang kailan ba? Do you think that's genuine? We need to pass the baton to the next generation. We have to accept that in this world that's changing very fast every single day, in the digital world that we are in today, is where we should be passing the baton, accepting that we should facilitate for better development. There's a reason why we're still a third world country. It's because of our social systems. We still have a hard time accepting the LGBT community until today, different religions until today. Policies that make me inclusive to some, that made the real some. It's always a give and take situation. In our citizens' case in the Philippines, it's always the leader and the citizen. The same goes to the facilitator and those who are going to be facilitated, these members of your respective groups. So again, to help develop individuals to be the best that they can be. And sometimes that would require you to pass the baton, to pass your learning. Sa tingin nyo ba, bakit hindi natin binibigay yung lahat? Because we still tend to compare ourselves towards others. I have to tell you this, I'll be very honest with you. My talks are identical. And I've seen some that have been using my PowerPoint, my content. But that's on me. Because my goal is to be genuine and to share the best of my capabilities. It's to help develop the individuals to be the best that they can be. And sometimes it's us giving our all. Kaya nga, that's the problem with some of our leaders today. That's the biggest problem. We can't learn how to pass the baton. We tend to keep it to ourselves. So how will the young generation grow? There's a reason why the youth is stigmatized. And I hope you're getting the big picture. Because what happens, the culture in these small groups is parallel to what happens in the nationwide scope. And I hope you take note of that. To know your why is to process and reflect. Reflection and processing of data, of these things that you learned from me or heard from me, is part of your why. Why are you taking notes right now? Why are you not taking notes? Bakit ka hindi na nakikinig sa Zoom? Bakit nag-screenshot ka lang tapos isa-send mo sa friends mo, hashtag student leader, hashtag student leadership webinar, IG story, hashtag talk, para mapansin ni crush. That can be your why. But I tell you this, is your why with good intent. To know your why is to process and reflect. And I hope it's for the common good. Because my why, the why that I want you to learn, is the why that's genuine for your fellow people, that would develop yourself and your fellow people for the common good. In our case, for the Filipino. As this quote has stated, a person cannot teach another person directly. You can't teach another person directly. It's not like a computer where you could give, or USB na pwede mo lang isaksak sa tenga mo tapos bibigay mo. Ito, 50 IQ, gamitin mo para sa test mo. Hindi naman ganun eh. We can't teach another person directly. What I have heard is you're not going to remember all of this. You're going to be remembering some. Rhyme, galing. But you can't really teach another person directly. Out of everyone in this room, my goal is to maybe just touch one that may accept the challenge. And that's on a very realistic level. Optimistically, I want you to get to learn and to process and analyze these things that I've said. We can only facilitate another's learning at the end of the day. We have our limits. There's a reason why we can't understand what our teacher tells us, despite how many drinks, kung ilan na yung coffee, energy booster, whatever. Ano ba yun? There are some medications when it comes to for us to retain more and all. We can't. And you know, after learning this quote, which means that we can't teach a person directly and a person can only facilitate another's learning, only a person can only facilitate another's learning. What does that mean? Learning never stops. Facilitation will be natural. You will always facilitate. This you and your girlfriend, you and your mom, you and your dad. There will always be facilitation. In whatsoever way. It doesn't necessarily have to be a group. You may not be a teacher, but the things you say, ang pagmumura mo, ang vices mo from smoking to drinking, is facilitating in a non-verbal way. Learning never stops. Facilitation is natural. And that is why teaching, facilitation management is applicable to anyone. I'll tell you that. So why facilitate more? We also have to show that there's a process in this instant loving world. To show that there's a process in this instant loving world. What do I mean by this? We love instant. Instant noodles. Canned goods, instant food. Instant kuryente generator. You have instant shopping, Lazada, Shopee. Instant jowa, Bumble, Messenger. Instant messaging. We want instant. But we have to know that there's a process, just like the golden circle, just like facilitation at the end of the day. That is why processing is very important, to trust the process. to analyze, in general to facilitate. Needing is to learn to be a facilitator. So my question is this: how can you be a leader? How can you lead without knowing how to facilitate? Gusto ko maging leader agad. Gusto ko kasi nakalagay sa Facebook status ko, I'm a leader. Hala, pag nakita ko ng crush na PRO ako, hala, vice president ako. Baka ganda ng resume ko sa college. Are you learning? Is that proper facilitation? How are you facilitating yourself up in the future? That's a form of corruption, I may add. You're corrupting yourself. In an analytical and realistic perspective, if you are a driver and refuse to get a ticket na magmamakaawa ka, that's also a form of corruption. But on a learning perspective, that's also in definition of corruption. You're corrupting yourself in learning. So again, you want to be a leader, learn how to facilitate first. For me, my formula of being a leader is this. You become a volunteer, which teaches you how to be selfless. After which, you become an advocate with a very simple definition of doing what should be, replacing what is. Then that, for me, is the process of being a leader. And being an advocate is facilitating. Because how can you change what is to what should be? How can you change the norms of our society today? It's to advocate. So to facilitate is to advocate. How can you advocate without facilitation? To close, we have to facilitate growth, facilitate learning, facilitate development, to be bigger, to be selfless. It starts with accepting that we can be facilitated. It's always a two-way process. Facilitation, facilitator. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Emmanuel Mirus Ponon, and I thank you for listening to today's session. If you want to be personally trained, if you want to be part of the organization, you may see our screens below. If you have any questions, I believe we will be allotting time for me. So I'll be going live now. If you want to be part of our latest project, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I respond to every single message, unless if I don't see it, if it's spam. But you may add me, you may message me, and I will try my best to contact you. Once again, maraming salamat at magandang araw. My name is Mirus Ponon, and I have spoken about facilitation management. I'm the youth advocate, and my goal is to change what is to what should be. Yours in sustainability, all for the Filipino youth, all for the ASEAN youth. Maraming salamat po at magandang araw.
In addition to that, we are the facilitators of our own creative evolution. So with that said, I hope that you get to reflect towards that talk, and I hope that you've learned through that simple message. Now, I believe we'll be having an open forum. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Thank you.
Ayan guys, at this time, we will be entertaining questions from you guys. If you have concerns, questions, feel free to type it in the comment box. More so, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself once recognized. Ayan na, while waiting for our delegates to ask their questions, we would like to thank Mr. Mirus Ponon that he talked about facilitation management. And it all boils down to the golden circle: what, how, and why. What is facilitation? What is facilitator? How? The act of facilitation. Why? Why is it important? And he concluded his talk by giving us a question for the delegates to ponder. How can you lead without facilitating?
So I believe I was asked this question. I'll call you anonymous because you may not want your name to be exposed. So the question to me was, is facilitation difficult? Really difficult if you do not know the persons that you are facilitating on. We can have different sources here and there to learn what the best way of facilitation is. But for me, in my personal opinion, it's for you to really make it personal. That facilitation does not only end on one day, which is something that I would like to emphasize as a speaker for today's session. Some of you may have listened, some of you may not. That's going to be normal. Some of you may find this boring, some of you may find this inspiring. Nasa sa inyo naman yun. But to emphasize clearly on my point directly, it's a long process. Facilitation is a long process. It doesn't end on our event today. So with that said, yes, it is difficult and it takes perseverance into taking facilitation on a very personal level. This talk was honestly hard for me because, again, as stated, this is not my forte. But facilitation is part of our process to be a leader. So I hope that my question was addressed. I believe you said thank you already private via private message. So thank you so much, and I hope I answered your question well.
Another question was asked po. Good morning, sir. How do you know that you have already learned enough to be a facilitator? Where does becoming a facilitator begin?
I believe that everyone has the capability of being a facilitator. It's not there is no specific requirement. Hindi naman natin sasabihin na, oh, kapag college ka lang pwede mag-facilitate, ang mga grade school, high school bawal lang. There's no structured ordinance or spectrum that our world created. Of course, we would go and look at leaders with certain credibilities, but I believe that anyone can be a facilitator. And again, naturally, we are learning individuals every single day, which makes us facilitators in the process and whatever we do. So, with that said, it's self-reflectory. Of course, to be quite honest with you, if I were to give a talk, if I were to lead a group without being committed, without being as prepared, then I think I am not ready to be a facilitator. It depends on your mental state at the end of the day as an individual. Becoming a facilitator starts by learning. For you to learn, because for me as an advocate, again, I actually have this page called Youth Advocate, and I have three main words. This is my slogan every single day: to educate, to advocate, and to inspire. Basically, to put it in layman's terms, you educate, you become educated to educate others so that you can inspire and share your advocacy to the world. And I believe, honestly, again, going back to what I've said in my recorded talk, it's how development works. It's how basically our nation builds. That is how the youth rises up in nation building. So it always would depend on oneself. But for me, it's on you saying yes to learning, to learning and to have the commitment to share your learnings once you have learned this particular learning. To put into instance, after this talk, you may have learned things here left and right that unfortunately not a lot of people have learned. And I am not restricting this to my talk. It can be on Sir Kenny's talk. It can be on Sir Rodney's talk. It's it can be on your friend's reflection, because learning can come from everywhere. And stories always have a certain impact together with action on our development, on our growth as individuals, not just as leaders, but as citizens as well. So I hope I have answered your question. If you would like to have a follow-up question, and if others would like to ask a question, I would love to answer your questions. Thank you. Thank you,
Ano-
Tyrone.
Another question po, how can you balance your responsibilities and duties with your ACADS, considering that you have many affiliations? Thank you po.
Thank you for that wonderful question. Going back to facilitation, it's for me to facilitate myself that I will assure that I can bring the best out of me every day. For me, as a leader, as an individual, as an advocate, my goal is to maximize and to bring out the best that I can do for in every engagement and in every affiliation that I'm with. Why would I say yes to something that I am not fully committed on? Gets ba? So, how do I balance? Of course, doon na papasok yung time management, doon na papasok yung pag-process ko. What, para sa akin, ano yung willing kong i-sacrifice? Ano yung willing kong i-stay because alam ko, para sa sarili ko to. Yes, marami akong, hala, sana nagawa ko to. But I don't want to call it as a regret. One of which is, yun nga, I don't get to spend a lot of time with my family. That's the trade-off. That's what I sacrifice in order to have these affiliations. I lose time when it comes to friends. I'm usually by myself when I prepare for this talk and the like throughout different discourses that we are able to do. So yes, napakaraming there's sacrifice and there's in doing something and committing to something, you are basically going to sacrifice one thing as well. So for me to balance everything, yeah, I really have to plan accordingly. So I really schedule everything. I use Google Calendar. I use a lot of applications that boost and entertain um, my productivity as a person. But doon na papasok yung mental state natin, which is another talk. Actually, earlier I was actually hosting about the mental health event. And one thing that was stated was you always have to ensure that you get to love yourself first before you love others, which we've heard of, which is a stigma, which is something that we've heard left and right, but it's true. In facilitation, it's for us to facilitate ourselves, then to our external facilitations as well. How can you facilitate a group if you cannot facilitate yourself? Diba? It's a theory, it's a saying that goes and is applicable every single day. So I hope that um yeah, it's hard, but it depends on oneself. One thing that I would always do is to know my needs and wants. So I segregate that. And what I do is I fold a piece of paper. I actually do this every month. I put on the left side, on the left portion of my paper, things that I do now, and on the right side, the things that I want to accomplish within the next year or so. So that would make me process, and that would make me process and facilitate myself into what is truly my needs and wants. And dito na papasok yung importance ng peers, ng facilitators. I myself also have mentors and facilitators in my life. It doesn't depend on how big it is. For example, again, when I was selected by the Department of Foreign Affairs as I actually got the message this morning that I was selected to represent as the sole Filipino. And there are certain trade-offs. Number one of which is to compress your time in school and such. So yeah, mahirap siya. But again, I think it goes to my why, because my why individually as an advocate is to, yun nga, for me, my personal definition of an advocate is someone that changes what is to what should be. So in leadership, in my volunteering here in the Philippines, I would always have this question: kung walang gagawa, sino? And that's something that has always inspired me through my years as someone that has experienced poverty in my early years. I believe I haven't mentioned it yet, but yes, I've experienced poverty and I have seen people experiencing poverty. So it's been a personal advocacy of mine, and it's something that I want to change, that I want to grow, and I want to be able to make a difference. So yes, time management and managing my certain affiliations, my work, my academics, my personal relationships is a difficult task. But once you get away with it, knowing that you are in a perfect mental condition, the rest follows. So yeah, and the help of friends, peers, friends, family as facilitators in their own way will guide me in the process. Because if there's one thing that we should know is that life is all about relationships, which means it's all about influencing one another. So yun, I think that's a very short TED talk on why time management is actually very important. If I were not able to facilitate time management very well, hindi ko magagawa yung two Zooms and one call na ginagawa ko ngayon. So yeah, that's basically it. And if you would like to learn more, I can actually share tips. I have applications that I actually would love to post. I'm planning to post soon about productivity apps, Android, iOS na makakatulong, and certain practices to do. So I hope that I have answered your question, whoever you are, and I hope you're having an amazing day so far. So thank you.
Thank you. Another question was raised po, but he or she remained to be anonymous. Was there a time? Was there a time po na may nag-facilitate kayo tapos sa gitna noon parang may nag-question kayo sa way ng pag-lead nyo and then everything was not clear anymore. How did you overcome that po? Was that clear? Or
Yeah, gets ko naman. Parang of course magkaka-self-doubt ka. Hala, I'm not being the best leader, I'm not being the best facilitator. To be very honest with you, para maging relatable, I was able to manage my time effectively. One thing na I've stated to my liaison, which is even, was that swerte na buti pala nag-recorded meeting ako kasi nawalan kami ng wifi here sa National Youth Commission office. And one thing, nung nakakonect na ulit ako, when I had the time to see how this discussion is going. Because of course, ang laking effect kapag live at kapag hindi. Siyempre sabihin nyo, hala, recorded naman. Wag na natin panoorin. But of course, I was actually looking at the organizers while I was giving a talk. And I was actually speaking to, on behalf of my team, which is Reina, which is here right now. So sabi ko, uy, sa tingin mo ba, natutuwa sila sa talk? Parang hindi. Parang yung host um, inaantok. So, of course, going back, my main topic is this. I doubt myself. I'm an overthinker, and that's part of us leaders. And, yeah, I always experience that. And doon rin papasok yung mga facilitators. Doon rin papasok yung mga facilitators. Because whether you're a leader or whether you're a follower, it's always great to have a facilitator and your peers in every single step of the way that you are as a individual. So yes, I've experienced that so far. Honestly, I also have experienced not having a facilitator. My parents did not support me because going back now, we did live in poverty, and they they saw that leadership wasn't something that was important in my career, because there would be some conventional um, parents that would say na ang importante lang naman is ang importante lang naman ay academics and all. So yeah, I experienced that a lot, and I will continue to experience that a lot. But I guess dito na papasok yung the importance of why. I remember in the Nescafe commercial, it was stated that para kanino ka nga bang bumabangon? Why do you stand up and raise up every single day? So yeah, that's basically the gist of my point. So yeah, I've experienced that, and yun doon na papasok yung hilig, yung affirmation and positivity and optimism that will be dealt with you by the facilitators. As a facilitator, ayaw mo naman na sabihin, ay, yan, wala ka kasi kwenta. It depends. Some can be challenged by that, but positivity always wins. So to whoever asked that question, I hope what I stated was clear. Thank you. Wait, before the host asked, I have one more. I have from 5SC. Sir, I just want to ask, how do you decide with committing another organization event, considering your other commitments? So yeah, I actually check my schedule. I check if it's feasible or not. So yeah, I really check it thoroughly. Tapos I tell myself, is this going to be for the betterment of me? And are there going to be other affiliations, such as my academics, such as my different organizations, that will be affected? And in totality, meron talaga. But yeah, I decide it takes. Oh, doon na papasok yung mga facilitators. They help you in your decision making. And I've asked my parents, I've asked my mentors, leaders that are not millennials now. I don't want to call them old, but they're not millennials now, and I still ask them today regarding that. It's always great to have people to guide you in your process as an individual. But at the end of the day, nasa yun. Follow your heart. Always trust your gut. And yeah, I have had decisions where napagod ako. One nung grade 12, ang rami. There was a time where I handled 17 organizations. Sabay-sabay. So araw-araw may meeting iba't ibang organization. So it was very stressful, and that's something that I've learned from already. So that's where learning, that's where experience also plays in part of our process. So yeah, thank you so much for that question, Shao.
Okay, thank you po, sir. So, I guess, ito na ang last question natin. So, this was sent anonymously again. So, the question is, what are the traits or values that you consider the most in facilitation?
I would always answer this question, whether it's for advocacy, leadership, facilitation, whatever. And that's being genuine. And that goes within our why. You don't facilitate para manligaw. Hala, gusto ko maging facilitator, may call up yung school dahil nandun crush ko, hala, para maging sikat ako sa school, magpa-facilitate ako. Is that something genuine? That's something very applicable and has been very relatable. Nakita natin nung Ulysses na ang raming volunteer opportunities, tapos naging trending yung mga ganon. But yeah, for me, it's always about being genuine. You have to be genuine as a facilitator. Because whether you are not genuine, pag nakita ng isa na pinafacilitate mo na hindi ka genuine, that cycle never stops. That's where the theory of corruption, of unproductivity, of negativity, of growth in a negative way begins. So I'd leave it at that. Let's put it short but sweet.
Okay, thank you po. Ayan, and thank you then so much to our delegates for participating. And once again, thank you, Mr. Emmanuel, for sharing your time with us today. So in behalf of San Pedro College and Project Binhi organizers, a certificate of appreciation will be given. San Pedro College awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Mr. Emmanuel Mirus Ponon for his excellent contribution and outstanding commitment as speaker during the Project Binhi, ang Pag-usbong ng Makabagong Liderato last February 13, 2021 via Zoom, given this 13th of February 2021. Signed by the President of Interim Saligan SSC, Carl Dominic E. Gascon. Signed by the Director of the Office of Student Affairs, Ms. Irene P. Hamora, MIT. Signed by the President of San Pedro College, Sister Aida T. Francilio, OP.
And once again, thank you so much, Mr. Mirus Ponon. At this time, we will be having a photo opportunity with our speaker. May we request the assigned person to do the honors for the documentation.
Okay. Show us your beautiful smiles in 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, sa other frame. 1, 2, 3, smile.